Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into some raw, behind-the-scenes facilitation notes from the Reach Out Foundation Academy to really decode the mechanics of wise decision-making. We're going to unpack the actual real-life curriculum taught by facilitators who have, walked some of the hardest paths imaginable. We'll see exactly how they guide people out of the vicious cycle of self-sabotage and ultimately toward true moral development.
Here's our roadmap for today. First, escaping the Roach Motel. 2. Risk, reward, and Farkle. 3. Heart, skills, and support. 4. Climbing the freedom ladder. And finally, number 5, effect over fact. Let's get right into it.
Section 1, Escaping the Roach Motel. Act 1, The Trap.
So, Facilitator Chris hits his class with a really profound concept right out of the gate. Blaming our circumstances immediately traps us in a mental prison. He tells his students, literally point blank, that the second you decide it's someone else's fault and not yours, bam, you're in a box. You are totally locked up mentally, and honestly, it doesn't even matter where your physical body happens to be at the time.
And this perfectly captures the absolute danger of external blame. Chris uses this brilliant analogy with his students. He says, look, if you're driving a car and you crash, you cannot blame the tree for just being in the way. You can't blame the Tesla for being on the road. Because as long as you're blaming the tree or that other car, you have zero power. You have absolutely no agency to fix what's actually going wrong. Internal ownership is the exact opposite. It means looking right in the mirror and saying, okay, I put myself in this mess, and therefore I have the power to get myself out of it. Is it easy? No, of course not. It requires doing the deeply uncomfortable, downright icky work of taking responsibility.
So the big takeaway here is that blaming others is basically a Roach Motel of self-sabotage. It just simply doesn't work if you actually want to fix your life. You check in by dodging accountability, right? But you cannot check out until you actually take ownership. Chris himself admits he put himself in several of these mental prisons way before he ever faced physical prison walls. So breaking out, it demands radical, unflinching honesty.
Section 2, Risk, Reward, and Farkle. Moving into Act 2, Action.
Because look, once you actually own your situation, you have to make a move. You have to take action. To ground this whole concept of taking risks in life, the facilitators actually bring in the classic dice game of Farkle during their sessions. If you haven't played it, you basically have 6 dice, and you constantly have to decide, do I roll again or do I hold back? It's entirely a game of momentum, balancing that risk and reward.
And just like Farkle requires you to risk 500 points just to, get on the board, life totally requires us to roll the dice and face adversity head on. You cannot just sit on the sidelines. Chris actually connects this directly to his own incredibly intense life experiences. He faced this brutal battle with cancer, dropping all the way down to just 113 pounds. His doctors literally told him that if he hadn't been in state champion wrestler shape prior to getting sick, his body would have just eaten itself away from the chemotherapy. But he leaned into that resilience to survive. He risked the sheer pain of the treatment for the ultimate reward of life itself. He proved that to get on the board of your own future, you have got to be willing to roll the dice and engage with that risk.
Which brings us to Section 3, Heart, Skills, and Support. Act 3, Boundaries.
Now, as we're about to see, just taking a risk with a good heart, that is not enough to guarantee success, or even safety for that matter. Actually, a good heart without the right boundaries can be incredibly dangerous. Take a look at this timeline mapping out facilitator Valerie's own saga. Imagine this scenario. It's 2 in the morning, a former inmate is released with literally nowhere to go, and Valerie, operating purely out of compassion, drives out and picks her up. She ends up housing this woman in her own 1-bedroom apartment. Keep in mind, this is the same apartment where Valerie's kids come to stay on the weekends. And for about 2.5 months, it kind of works out. The guest even gets her commercial driver's license. But then things escalate. The guest becomes super territorial. She literally starts dictating who could sleep on the couch, effectively threatening the sanctuary of Valerie's own family.
Valerie's incredibly vulnerable story perfectly proves this equation we're looking at. As she very openly tells her class, she made that late-night decision from her, and these are her words, stupid heart, completely bypassing all logic. A good heart all by itself tends to make rash choices. But when you combine that heart with actual tangible skills, like knowing how to set firm boundaries and a really solid support system, that is the secret sauce. That's what creates truly wise decisions. Because at the end of the day, you can't just play the savior. You have to have a method to the madness.
Section 4, Climbing the Freedom Ladder. Act 4, Moral Adjustment.
Let's explore how we actually ascend from those basic survival behavioral loops into genuine moral adjustment. The curriculum uses what they call the freedom ladder. It's designed to move participants up and away from their based instincts. Down at the very bottom, people are operating purely on self-centered pleasure-seeking or pain avoidance. Just doing whatever feels good in the moment or running away from anything uncomfortable. But as they start to climb this ladder, they have to unlearn years, sometimes decades of manipulation. The ultimate goal highlighted here is Step 6. This step focuses entirely on making moral adjustments for the benefit of the community, truly helping others. And the harsh truth is, you simply cannot help anyone else if you're still stuck at the bottom of the ladder, lying just to protect yourself.
To even begin this climb, participants use the Step 1 pyramid tool. And guys, this is such a fascinating exercise. They have to map out their past 20 years, really anchoring the reality of what happened against what could have been. But they have to do it by drawing symbols instead of writing words. Why no words, you ask? Because forcing people to use symbols completely blocks their ability to intellectualize or spin some clever narrative. It literally forces a different part of the brain to engage. It enforces radical, brutal honesty about what actually happened in reality, completely stripping away all those clever excuses we tell ourselves. Turns out, you really can't talk your way out of a drawing.
Finally, Section 5, Effect over Fact. Act 5, Owning the Impact.
Here we see two sides of the exact same coin when it comes to how our actions impact the community around us. Valerie, taking a much more pastoral, empathetic approach, reminds everyone that our good intentions, they mean absolutely nothing to the people we hurt. Like, you might not have meant to hurt your family, but they are caught in the crossfire of your bad decisions anyway. Chris, on the other hand, takes this forensic, hard-hitting approach. He demands that we own the effect of our actions. When his students give their testimonies, if they just stand up and list dry facts like, I stole money, or I lied, without acknowledging the deep emotional pain they caused, Chris stops them. He calls them out right there for acting like disingenuous politicians. You have to own the effect. You have to own that true emotional impact, not just recite the facts to get it over with.
And seeing these actual, raw, in-room facilitator notes from June 11th, 2026, it just perfectly grounds all these high-level philosophies into the gritty, messy reality of extreme accountability. You can see the rapid scribbles, the heavy emphasis on honesty, the hand-drawn pyramids. It is just such a powerful visual testament to the hard, totally unglamorous, day-to-day work that is actually required to rebuild a life and regain trust.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought to really challenge your own moral development. When your actions inevitably hurt someone else because, hey, we're all human, it happens, are you just stating the facts to get out of trouble, or are you truly owning the effect you had on their lives? Think about that the very next time you find yourself reaching for an excuse. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive.